Do you feel frustrated trying to grow your franchise? Are you having trouble balancing your consumer and franchise development marketing? Do you wish there was an easier way? Imagine if you had a proven roadmap to take your franchise's marketing from costing you to making you money. That's why we've created the Franchise Growth Blueprint. We walk you through the exact same process that we use to run franchise marketing campaigns for our clients at scale that has resulted in triple-digit growth. This blueprint isn't for anyone. It's not for people just starting a franchise. It's not for franchises without long-term goals. This is for franchises that want to scale up their marketing in a predictable and profitable way using a proven roadmap. If you want to sell more franchises, keep your current franchisees happy, and learn from people who have already done it, go to franchisegrowthblueprint.com and sign up today. That's franchisegrowthblueprint.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Franchise Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm super excited. I have Sandra Graham, who is the operations specialist, technical writer, and co-founder of the Franchise Kickstarter. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
No problem. It's great to have you. So for our listeners who haven't heard of you and the Franchise Kickstarter, what exactly do you do?
Yeah, the Franchise Kickstarter is a program. So it's an 8-month program designed to simplify and streamline the process of franchising your business. And when we developed the program, we spent a lot of time really diving into who is the business owner that's thinking about expanding their business through franchising. And what are they doing? What are the problems that they might be facing? So last time we talked, I said, we really get in there and we do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, because most of the time when someone comes to us, they're still working in their business. So they need that extra support as they transition into this new business model that they're going into, which is why it's a full comprehensive program, from us writing your business plan to completing a competitive analysis, drafting your operations manuals, helping you put your software in place, your legal documentation, and really figuring out who you want to bring into your team as your new franchise partners, and how to vet them and how to bring them in to your new system that you've got.
Wow, that is one heck of a service that you provide. So I'm curious, what do you see some of the biggest mistakes, biggest myths that potential franchisors have when they're just starting out?
Yeah. So you're going to get a different answer from me than what I think some other people might say, because I have an operations background. So as an operations person and someone who does some of the technical writing, the biggest mistakes that I see is not pausing to kind of clean house before you start scaling. So that means like really going through your processes, making sure that you've removed anything that's manual, anything that's paper-based, really making sure that you're leveraging technology, asking yourself, where can things go wrong in this process? Do I have proper handoffs? Do I have good, strong communication feedback loops? So that's a really critical piece of our program. So after we've helped you confirm your new business model, and go out and apply for funding while you're waiting to hear back, we're working on all of that. So we're really taking that high level view of your business operations and making sure everything's kind of cleaned up and nice and tidy, so that it'll make it easier to replicate it in your new location.
Interesting. So I guess what are some of the, things that people overlook when they're trying to tidy things up, or maybe don't even consider that they need to tackle during this tidying up period?
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. Someone comes to us and says, wow, I've got a good model. I'm making lots of money. I'm highly profitable. I want to grow. I think franchising is quicker, faster, easier for me, maybe slightly false. And now I want to franchise. So, when they come to us, it's really just taking a look at what they're doing. It's usually the person who's really heavily involved in running their business. Maybe they have a smaller team, so they have less people to rely on and the need to delegate as much. If they have a bigger team, then they're already kind of looking at delegation and maybe using software. But the point being nowadays, there's so many great tools in place that automate a lot of this for you that collect data and give you that level of transparency for you to see what's going on in your operations and things are going wrong.
Mm, very interesting. So tell me more about these tools that provide you with transparency. What are some, I guess, like KPIs and insights that a new franchisor should be looking for when evaluating for this type of software?
Yeah, going beyond just financial KPIs. So the other standard term is non-financial or operational KPIs.
Mm,
And that's for, again, from someone with an operations background, what I really like to spend time on because when you're scaling, um, or, scaling, growing, though they're a little bit different, you're going to start to have problems. And if you don't have proper software in place, you're not going to be able to see where the problems are coming from and when they're starting to happen as quickly as possible. So it's going to make it a lot harder to create solutions to issues that you're experiencing. The software tools that you would use is going to vary on, the business that you have. A basic example of a software tool, though, is project management system, a ticketing system, making sure that you have a comprehensive CRM that plugs into other things that allows you to kind of automate and your marketing campaigns or segment things out. And then financial, there's lots of great ones in the franchising world. The one that I really like because it's just really easy to get up and running is DaVinci. And I think that's the other thing to keep in mind when you're using software tools. Don't go as robust as you can. It's like, trying to get the fanciest version of something when you're still trying to learn how to do something. So the learning curve is going to be too steep. It's going to be really costly. It's going to take you forever to set it up. And because you're still learning your new operations and your setup, it's going to feel like fitting square in a round hole, so to speak. You're really trying to force something to work that hasn't worked that isn't going to work because you don't really understand your new operational setup yet. Does that make sense?
yeah, that totally makes sense. Now, I want to go down on a bit of a different tangent here,
Mm-hmm.
Sandra. So, you mentioned about how businesses or like new franchisors need to kind of switch in that mindset of delegation and focusing on kind of uh, more in the sense of the customer is now kind of the franchisee rather than the end client. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, what's your experience and what are your thoughts on that? On how new franchisors can help get into that mindset?
This is why we have a team of executive coaches, because it's emotional. A lot of the time when your business is highly successful is because you feel really passionate about your business. You actually do love working in your business. Um, so I think it's just having support to shift your mindset that everything will continue to be great in your business as you delegate. And understanding that your desire to delight your customer is just a new customer base. So usually when people are really successful, it's because they've nailed how to delight their customers. Um, so that, again, that's why we have a team of executive coaches because they're here to support you in shifting your mind frame, your mindset, and understanding your new roles and responsibilities, and really to shine in your new leadership skill set.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So switching gears here, one question I always like to ask is, what advice would you give someone just starting out as a franchisor?
A lot of people say this. I think it's trust your gut.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of like franchising your business is pretty standard. Though there's some nuances depending on your industry. Um, and I think our goal of the program is really helping you learn to trust your gut, hear your inner voice. We know that you have it inside you to achieve really great things, and we're just your support system. And I think that's kind of the hardest thing as you're starting something new,
Mhm.
is reminding yourself that you've already got a great set of tools that you've been learning over the years that is still applicable to franchising your business.
You know what? That's so true. Because for a lot of people, starting off, like franchising can seem so overwhelming that you can get so easily lost in the weeds and you kind of
Hmm.
forget all of this amazing knowledge that you've accumulated over these years, just running and growing your business to the point of where it already is.
Hmm. Yeah.
Cool. So, Sandra, I'm curious. As a like as an operations and as a technical writer, it seems that you do a lot of like helping put together these systems and processes. What are some things that people need to keep in mind when creating these systems? We'll get right back to the show, but do you feel frustrated trying to grow your franchise? Are you having trouble balancing your consumer and franchise development marketing? Do you wish there was an easier way? Imagine if you had a roadmap to take your franchise's marketing from costing you to making you money. That's why we've created the Franchise Growth Blueprint. To find out more, visit franchisegrowthblueprint.com. That's franchisegrowthblueprint.com. Now back to today's episode.
Yeah, this is my probably my favorite. Keep it simple. Only focus on one goal. So things usually get muddled up if you have multiple goals in mind. And it's the same with technical writing. When you're drafting your material, you have one goal in mind, you have one audience. You don't have mixed audiences. That's when it gets really murky. So it's kind of cool that the same applies to technical writing or writing really great operations manuals.
Very, very interesting. So I guess like how do you hone in on, what that one goal, what that one thing should be when creating this content?
Yeah. I need to accomplish X because of Y. And then ask yourself, um, is that one goal? Is that two goals? How important is it? I think when people list it out, usually it'll be kind of multiple goals mixed in there.
Mhm.
And without getting too complicated, I think the main goal is to just remind yourself, what am I doing? I've got a business that serves these customers. I want them to feel delighted. I want them to know consistently that they can come in and be out of here in 30 minutes. Um, I, or maybe the question is just consistency. We want the same thing to happen every single time. Um, but focus on, I think your customer is probably the most important thing.
Totally. So you bring up a good point, standardization and making sure that you get the same result every single time. So,
Mhm.
how do you create a system or like an SOP that ensures you get to that same result every time, but also gives the people that are doing it some room for innovation so that, you as a franchise system are constantly kind of pushing and improving things?
Yeah. I think, when we talk about this, usually I talk about like the evolution of your processes. And I always say, keep it simple.
Mhm.
Don't try and look at it from too many angles and make it overly complex. So think about what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm trying to get from A to B. Um, and, and do it. So physically, this is how I'm getting it done. Okay. Now write down all of the steps that you took to get from A to B. Okay. Now ask yourself when you look at those steps, is there a way to get there quicker, or better? Is there a more efficient way, a more effective way of getting there? And then do it again until you really understand the best way to get from A to B.
Mhm.
Then write it out and then delegate it to somebody and see if it can be replicated. When you pass it off to somebody, usually you're going to realize that there's some other things that are missing because we just naturally take things for granted when we're so close to a process or doing something. So bringing in a fresh set of eyes is really helpful. And then together you're, modifying what you're building to the point that you both feel really good about it. Or maybe, you've got a bigger team, you can pull more people in. And then you have to at some point say, okay, now we're ready to really continue to test this. And then confirm when you're going to revisit how you're doing something to further modify and improve it. I always say keep it really simple. Try not to change too many things too soon, because it makes it really hard to understand what you changed and what actually produced a result. It also makes it more confusing for people, because if you've changed it too quickly, then they're still remembering the way that they were doing it 2 weeks ago. And then the 2 weeks ago process versus this new process kind of end up getting blended. And then you start to see some real inconsistencies. So do it long enough for people to really master it, and then start looking at new ways of optimizing it.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love that point that you made, like if you change things too quickly, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of why you're changing things, because it's gonna give you the inverse output of what you actually want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's going to make it really hard for you to have control over that whole process and understand what you actually did that produced a positive result, because you've got so many people involved in the process, right? So there's going to be minute variances between how everybody does it, regardless of how dialed in your processes are and how strong your training is. That's just inevitable of people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting. So from a training perspective, like what do you recommend doing um, for new franchisors starting out? Like what are some? Let me rephrase the question. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see franchisors making when it comes to training?
That's great. Okay. So, and I was going to kind of bring it down this round, down the conversation down this way, regardless of how you frame that question. So what I typically see is, people are franchising their business and they're doing it really quickly, and money is always an issue. So it's kind of like a patchwork that's being done, which is why, again, we said, let's build a comprehensive program, fixed-based pricing, so this is how much it's going to cost to get it done right. But in majority of the instances, they've kind of got an operations manual that has been slapped together, and maybe even have achieved the biggest grievance in that buying a template and trying to work from it. So it's still not totally applicable to their business, and they're using that as a training material. And they're taking this 300-page binder and going from cover to cover. And they're losing people, because it hasn't been modified to make those learning goals really clear. So when you're reading a set of instructions, usually that kind of higher level goal is still missing from it. The learning objectives haven't been clearly identified, and some sort of testing hasn't been created to actually understand or confirm that the reader has properly ingested the material. So you've got someone who has just barely gotten out of running the day-to-day of their business. They're using a template. They haven't clearly identified their learning objectives. They have no means for testing for competency, and they're kind of just winging it. And then they wonder why afterwards their franchise partner has retained about a fraction of the material.
Interesting. Yeah, all very, very good points. So Sandra, we're coming up near the end of the episode, and the way I like to always end them is with something that I call the lightning round. So it's just a few fast-paced questions coming at you. No curveballs, I promise. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Awesome. So first question is, what is your favorite tool or app that you cannot live without?
Oh, for the type of work that I do, Monday, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, Monday is such a great platform to keep you on track.
It's incredible what you can do with it.
Totally. Next question is, what is your favorite book?
I read this book, I think, when I was probably 11 or 12, and it remains the same. So it's Margaret Atwood's Edible Woman.
Cool. Very cool.
Next question is, who is a franchise leader that you look up to most?
Oh, that's a great question. I've just connected with the CFA community, so I'm going to say it's a body. And I'd say the CFA, so the Canadian Franchise Association, they are a body that you should definitely be connected with, and demonstrate leadership in all sorts of different ways.
Awesome. Such a good group of people. All right, Sandra,
Mhm.
last question, I promise. Where can people find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, we have a splash page. We launched our program in August. So they can look us up at thefranchisekickstarter.com. We're also on LinkedIn. They can shoot me an email, Sandra at thefranchisekickstarter.com, or look me up on Instagram.
Awesome. Sandra, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know our
Mhm.
listeners are really going to appreciate it and find a ton of insights from it.
Great. Thank you so much for
All
having
right.
me.
No problem. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Franchise Marketing Podcast. If you found this episode useful, share it with a friend and subscribe now so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. And until then, happy marketing.